David Fletcher had been living off the grid for 3 years. At 55, he'd walked away from his career as a corporate accountant after his wife passed, trading his suits and spreadsheets for hiking boots and solitude. His cabin deep in the Appalachian woods was simple, just him, the trees and the quiet rhythm of nature. He'd built a peaceful life there, tending his small garden, chopping wood, and watching the seasons change. Most days, he didn't see another soul. That's how he preferred it. Until that September afternoon when he heard someone cry out. David was checking his traps near the creek. When the sound cut through the forest, a woman's voice, sharp with pain and fear. Without thinking, he ran toward it, his boots crunching over fallen leaves. In a small clearing, he found her. She was in her early 30s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a cream-colored dress that was completely impractical for hiking. She sat on the forest floor, clutching her ankle, her face pale with shock. "Don't move," David said, dropping to his knees beside her. His eyes quickly scanned the ground and spotted it, a copperhead, still coiled nearby, its distinctive pattern visible in the dappled sunlight. "It bit me," the woman gasped. "I was just walking and I didn't see it." "I know, it's okay. Try to stay calm." David's voice was steady, though his heart was racing. He'd lived in these woods long enough to know. Copperhead bites weren't usually fatal, but they needed attention fast. "I need to look at your ankle, may I?" She nodded, wincing as he gently examined the bite marks on her lower leg. 2 puncture wounds, already beginning to swell. "My cabin's 10 minutes from here. Can you walk if I help you?" "I think so." Her voice trembled, but she was trying to stay composed. David slipped his arm around her waist and helped her stand. She was unsteady, leaning heavily against him as they moved through the forest. He matched his pace to hers, patient and careful, guiding her around roots and rocks. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep her talking, keep her alert. Elena Whitmore." "I'm David. You're going to be fine." "Elena. Copperhead bites hurt like hell, but they're rarely dangerous if we treat them properly." "How do you know?" she asked through gritted teeth. "I've been living out here for 3 years. You learn things." When they reached his cabin, a sturdy log structure with a covered porch, David helped her inside and settled her on his couch. He elevated her leg, applied a clean bandage to keep the wound from getting dirty, and gave her water. "I need to get you to a hospital," he said, "but my truck's a mile away at the main road, and I don't have a phone that works out here. Can you tell me where you were headed? Is someone expecting you?" Elena's face crumpled slightly. "No, I was trying to find something. My family's old estate. It's supposed to be somewhere in these woods, but I got lost." "An estate? Out here?" David's brow furrowed. "There are no estates in this part of the wilderness." "There was once," Elena said, her voice gaining strength despite her pain. "My great-grandfather built a hunting lodge, more like a fort. Really, back in the 1920s, the Whitmore Lodge. My family abandoned it decades ago, but according to the old property records, it should still be standing somewhere." David sat back, recognition flickering in his eyes. "Wait, Whitmore Lodge? I know that place. Or what's left of it?" Elena's eyes widened. "You do?" "I stumbled across it about a year ago. Stone walls, half-collapsed roof, overgrown with vines. I thought it was just old ruins. I had no idea it belonged to anyone." "It belongs to me," Elena said softly. "Or it will if I can find it. My father passed away 6 months ago. In his will, he left me the land and whatever remains of the lodge. But there's a condition. I have to visit it. See it for myself before I can officially inherit it. He wanted me to understand where our family came from." David studied her. "So you came out here alone? No guide, no equipment, in a dress?" Elena had the grace to look embarrassed. "I thought it would be a simple hike. The county records showed a trail marker. Obviously, I was wrong." Despite the situation, David found himself smiling. "City girl?" "Manhattan," Elena admitted. "I'm a museum curator. The closest I usually get to wilderness is Central Park." "Well, you're lucky I was nearby. That snake could have ended your adventure real quick." Over the next few hours, David watched Elena carefully for signs of serious reaction. The swelling continued, but her breathing stayed steady and her color improved. They talked to pass the time. Elena told him about her life in New York, the art exhibitions she organized, the careful preservation of history she loved. David told her about his past. about losing his wife to cancer, about needing to escape the world that reminded him of everything he'd lost. 3 years is a long time to be alone, Elena observed. I wasn't ready for people, David said quietly. Out here, the grief felt manageable, honest. And now? David met her eyes. Now I'm not so sure. Funny how a snake bite can make you reassess things. That evening, when Elena's pain had subsided enough to walk with support, David made a decision. Tomorrow, if you're up for it, I'll take you to the lodge. It's about 3 miles from here. Rough terrain, but I know the way. Elena's face lit up. You'd do that? You came all this way. Seems wrong to let a copperhead stop you from seeing what you came for. The next morning dawned clear and cool. Elena's ankle was still swollen and tender, but the worst had passed. David wrapped it carefully and lent her a pair of his boots, too big, but better than her ruined flats. He packed supplies and they set out slowly. The forest was beautiful in the early light, gold and green filtering through the canopy. David led the way, pointing out landmarks, helping Elena over difficult passages. She moved carefully, but with determination, only occasionally needing to lean on him. After 2 hours of steady hiking, they emerged into a clearing, and there it was, Whitmore. Lodge rose from the forest like something out of a fairy tale or a ghost story. The stone walls still stood strong, 30 feet high, with narrow windows that looked like arrow slits. Ivy covered much of the structure, and trees grew close to the walls. The roof had partially collapsed, exposing timber beams to the sky. A heavy wooden door, weathered but intact, stood at the entrance. Elena gasped, pressing her hand to her mouth. It's real. It's really here. They approached slowly. David pushed open the heavy door, which groaned on rusted hinges. Inside, the main hall was dim and cool, with shafts of sunlight breaking through gaps in the roof. Animal heads, deer, elk, bear, still hung on the walls, faded and dusty. A massive stone fireplace dominated one end of the room. Elena walked through the space like she was in a cathedral, touching the walls, running her fingers over carved initials in the stone. My great-grandfather built this, she whispered. He was an industrialist, made his fortune in steel. This was his escape from the world. Just like you, she added, glancing at David. Seems like it runs in the family, David said gently. They explored for an hour, discovering old furniture covered in dust, a kitchen with a hand pump still attached to the sink, bedrooms with iron bed frames. In what must have been the study, Elena found a wooden chest. Inside were old photographs, letters, and a leather-bound journal. She sat on the floor, carefully turning the yellowed pages, tears running down her cheeks. These are his words, his thoughts. I never knew him, but here he is. David sat beside her, not touching, just present. Your father wanted you to find this, to know where you came from. I think he wanted me to understand something else too, Elena said, looking around at the stone walls, the wilderness beyond. That there's more to life than the city, than work, than the safe paths we choose. He spent his whole life in boardrooms, but he came from this, from people who built with their hands and lived close to the earth. She turned to David. You understand that? That's why you're here. Maybe, David admitted. Or maybe I was just running away. Or maybe you were running towards something you hadn't found yet. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, possibility. Over the following weeks, Elena returned to the city to handle the legal transfer of the property. But she came back. Again and again she came back, staying in David's cabin, helping him weatherproof the old lodge, learning to live in the rhythm of the forest. They worked side by side, restoring what could be saved, clearing brush, making the lodge habitable again. Elena discovered she loved working with her hands, loved the simplicity of life away from Manhattan's constant noise. And David discovered that his heart, which he'd thought was closed forever, could still open, could still find room for someone new. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the lodge watching the sunset paint the sky gold and pink, Elena reached for David's hand. I've been thinking, she said. What if I didn't go back? What if I stayed? David looked at her. This woman who'd stumbled into his life because of a snake and a lost family legacy. What about your work? Your life in the city? Museums will always need curators. But I only get one life. She squeezed his hand. I want to spend it here. With you, if you'll have me. David felt something break. open in his chest, something that had been frozen since his wife died. "Elena, I'm 55 years old. I live in a cabin with no running water. I'm not the kind of man someone like you—" "You're exactly the kind of man I need," Elena interrupted. "You're kind. You're steady. You saved my life. And somehow, in the middle of this wilderness, I found something I didn't know I was looking for." "What's that?" "Home," she said simply. David pulled her close, and they sat together as darkness fell over the forest and the lodge. This place built by her ancestors, now restored by their hands, now holding the promise of a new beginning. Sometimes we go searching for our past and find our future instead. Sometimes a wrong turn leads us exactly where we need to be. And sometimes the wilderness that seems so dangerous and unknown is actually the place where we finally find our way home.